Hey, so I had a few people ask me about how I put my songs together, so I wanted to take a little time to walk through the process of how I just made that song. 99% of the time, I get my samples from records. I usually run all my samples through my 202 first to slow them down and get the pitch where I want them, and it also adds a little bit of crackle. From there, I go into the 404 where I chop. I'll either do drums with finger drumming, or I'll use my MPC and I'll build a beat on there and put it on one of these pads, sometimes a few different patterns. Let's try to recreate that song I just made. So right off the bat, I like that. I think there's enough variation in there to keep the samples interesting. And there's not drums, which I'm going to have to chop around, or vocals, which I'm going to have to chop around. So let's record it to the 202. That should be enough. Now let's listen back to it on the 202 and try to find a pitch we like. I think that sounds pretty good. I do it all by ear. I'm not looking for anything in particular. Sometimes I'll try to tap out drums to it while I'm listening to it to see if it's too slow to where the changes in the transients might make it difficult to make a drum pattern that sounds good too. All right, so the next thing I do is transfer it to the 404. The record player is going into the 202. The 202 is going into the 404. The audio is coming out of the 404. Now, one thing about the 404 is when you copy over to different pads, you lose high end, but that, of course, only applies if you're using the original 404. The 404 SX, I don't think has that problem. What I'm doing right now is I'm copying that entire sample to each one of the pads that I want to chop on to become one of the chops. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't know exactly where I want to chop it yet. I like having the ability to move it anywhere in that original sample and not just sample over parts of it that I think I'm going to use and then later be like, I wish I had a little bit in one direction or the other. In general, I like to give myself at least 6 pads to chop on. I feel like that gives enough variation or enough options to where one variation could be 4 pads and another could be either 3 or 4. I feel like that helps keep the song more interesting when it's not just the same variation over and over. Now is when the chopping starts. I'll be honest, I do it all by ear. I mess around a lot till I find something I like. There are a few things that I gravitate towards, which is trying to find the general rhythm of the sample and chopping right at the transient. And I find it gives a smoother transition between samples. Let's mess around and see what we can get. So here's an example of a little chop that I think sounds good, and I'll play with the start point just to make sure there's no noise before it, and it's a smooth beginning. Because once we add compression, if there's any kind of pop or noise before it, it'll amplify that. I like that. So as I'm chopping, I'll just do a lot of playing the pads to try to find out what sounds good together. Like I said before, I already have my drum sounds loaded into these pads on the bottom. Typically, if I'm going to finger drum, I'll put a kick here, a snare here, a hi-hat here, and I'll usually put another kick here that's lighter. Right now they're the same volume, so I'll sample them in and then usually lower the volume on this one. And the reason for that is it gives me some variation in the sound of the kick, so I can do things like this. I'll always turn my hi-hat way down if I'm going to use compression, because when that compression kicks on, it can make your hi-hat really stab you in the head. While I'm trying to come up with a drum loop, there's a lot of trial and error for me if I'm doing the finger drumming. Sometimes I'll get a pattern on here that I like, record it to a pad, and then try to play drums to it. So let's do that. All right, let's try that again. Oh. So let's loop this. Sometimes I'll just have a beat idea in my head and I'll record it to a pad and then try to play the chops to it. Pretty close. It's not too bad. See if we can do that a little better. Okay, I like that. Now I'm going to turn on pressure. compressor over everything. And I try to set everything so that the samples are quiet enough to where when the kick drum hits, it ducks it out like a fake side chaining compression. Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. My hats are probably a little louder than I like, but I can live with it. So we've got one empty pad left, and I like to record a progression to that pad and then play around with effects and see what I like that I might want to do in the final song. So now we've got a loop. Mess around with stuff. And it's just a lot of trial and error till I find something I like. And that's it. I'll try to arrange everything. And for the song I played earlier, I did have some vocal clips.
Well, I feel very fine. I feel very buoyant and light.
And I'll just throw them in there where I like. That's all there is to it. Hope this helped. If you had any questions, please leave a comment. I'm happy to do another video going into more depth on any one of these things. And if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe.